All right. Welcome, everybody. Episode 01, Sales by Friday podcast, hosted by Bruno Gonzalez. And here I'm with Jackson Ensley. In this very first podcast, because nothing is structured yet, we're going to talk about what Sales by Friday is, how Sales by Friday started, what this podcast and the content surrounding Sales by Friday is really going to be all about. And then we're going to dive into Jackson's story himself, and we're going to have a great conversation about why you got into entrepreneurship, your story as an entrepreneur, what you've learned, things like that.
Fantastic.
All right, set to go. All right, so first things first, let's talk a little bit about Sales by Friday in general, what it is. So if you want to give a little intro to what this thing is, you got to let the people know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to me, Sales by Friday is just a group of 6 kids. We all just graduated college. We're all entrepreneurs and we all own our own businesses. And we're just trying to learn as much about business from other founders as possible, kind of share that wealth and share those stories online. Yeah. We've done some events. Now we're trying to push out some content, learn as much about the business as we can.
Yep. So it's just going to be a channel about complete learning, curiosity around entrepreneurship, breaking down the barriers to entrepreneurship. Because I think it's a really hazy, intimidating concept for a lot of people. But once you get started, you realize how easy it can be to start businesses and essentially just solve people's problems.
Definitely.
Which is all that it is. So, all right, let's talk about the Sales by Friday events. The thing that kind of started this whole content journey. But
yeah. So the first Sales by Friday event happened senior year of our college experience, which was a little over a year and a half ago. Basically what happened is we were all chilling on a roof one day and we were talking about this business idea that we had in this industry called death technology. And we had this business that we all thought was a fantastic business that we had heard somebody talk about in the startup accelerator on our college campus. And one of us kind of jokingly said, I bet if all of us came together and tried to build that business in a week, we could make sales starting on Monday and we could make sales by Friday. And then one of us said, man, Sales by Friday is a great name. We should try that.
All started freaking out.
Yeah, so we were having a great time. We ended up ordering an Airbnb that day. And then 2 weeks later, we were on a lake in upstate New York building a business in less than a week. And it was absolutely a train wreck and probably the best experience of my life.
Yeah, it was like the most fun vacation ever. And it was like electric. It was supposed to be a whole week, but that first event ended up being, because of horrible planning, like 72 hours. We timed the whole thing. It was like 72 hours.
It was horrible.
And, we did this whole company, the new concept, like made the hardware, made the software. It was probably like one of the most complicated things we could have tried for the first one. But it was so good because it's 72 hours. And by the end, we had it up. We were attempting making sales. The first time completely failed. We did not make a sale. And there's a couple of rules that come with the Sales by Friday events, like no close family members, no close friends. It has to be a stranger. It's got to be a new concept. Can't just be like a trending dropship product and running ads, because that's not quite the creativity we want to tap into.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to focus on with the Sales by Friday events, is that we're not just opening a drop shipping Shopify store and trying to make sales that way. I mean, we had 2 technical founders that were with us. We built legitimate software along with a physical product that we were selling. We created marketing, we created a brand, we created a WordPress website, coded all the way from the ground up, no themes or anything. It was a serious operation and we made zero money, but we learned a ton of things along the way.
Yeah, it's a ton of things in just 72 hours, which speaks to the whole, some of the foundations of entrepreneurship, which is like you learn the most when you're actually doing the stuff. And nothing you can learn in school, nothing you can learn from textbooks can compete with just like going out and doing stuff, especially in like a high pressure environment like Sales by Friday is. And you end up learning a ton. Like we discovered things about like ad channels and like Snapchat chat ads. And,
more specifically, how ad channels don't like it when you just start a website and try to run conversion ads.
Instantly banned on everything.
Instantly banned.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, that happens to you now.
With
definitely your current stuff. So those big tech, they love banning. All right, so that's Sales by Friday. Event in a nutshell. We've done 2 of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Second one was a success. First one was a failure. We've done a pretty bad job filming these things so far. So next one we do, we're gonna have like a full-time videographer and editor. said we were gonna do that last time, didn't do it. We got some good snippets, but someday we'll throw together collage. But in the meantime, we wanted to do content with the people behind Sales by Friday to kind of mesh together everything we're learning and take people on the journey. And mostly, the number one thing, at least I want out of this, is just to create content so I can look back in 5 or 10 years and see what I was talking about and point out all the things I was doing wrong or the misconceptions I had, because it's all learning all the time, and having like a documentation of some sort, I think, is something that you'll never regret looking back and seeing.
Definitely.
You talking with your friends about the stuff you care about. Okay, that's Sales by Friday in a nutshell. So now, the main point of this episode is to introduce Jackson Ensley, one of the founders of Sales by Friday, and talk a little bit about what got you into entrepreneurship, what got you into business in general, what you've learned along the way, and what you can leave behind for the audience as of today, which I'm sure will change a lot in the coming months and years. So, question number one, all right? Why business? Not entrepreneurship, but like what attracted you to business in general? And after that, why entrepreneurship in general?
Man, that's a great question. I don't exactly know when it started in my life, but I think that most people that kind of are obsessed with business and entrepreneurship can tell you that from a very early age, they sort of realized that that's what they wanted to do. I had family members that were in my very close family that had been entrepreneurs in past lives or were current entrepreneurs, and that sort of surrounded me with that energy all throughout my early life. So I always knew that that was a possibility of something to do. But not even just that. Ever since I was a kid, I loved creating things. I got one of those flip cameras when I was in like the 6th grade, started YouTube channels for everything under the sun. I was making a lot of YouTube videos. I started a clothing brand in high school, the classic, early entrepreneur clothing brand.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's a really common sort of story that
Yep.
You don't know why you're doing it, but you just do. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do anything other than like I had an idea and I wanted to put it online and I wanted to sell it. I didn't really understand what entrepreneurship was, or more specifically, what business was. I just knew that I wanted to do that.
So for you, it was more about like doing actions.
Yes, absolutely.
It was like just doing actions that you found were interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I had ideas in my head. I taught myself how to program and I made apps. I taught myself how to do graphic design and I made t-shirts and kind of learned how to do the whole Shopify thing. And it didn't really come from a sense of like I wanted to make money or anything. I just found these things so interesting and I had it in my head that I felt like I could do it, and I just did.
Cool. Yeah. No, I had a kind of similar like mindset around that. It was more about just like doing things I found interesting.
Yeah.
Certainly there's always like I had some monetary motivation, but
as always,
it was mostly the actions. Okay. So what was the first business you ever started? And you just mentioned the clothing brand, but what was the first business you can like recall ever starting? And why did you start it in the first place?
Oh man, it really depends on how you define a business. Like I said, I made a lot of YouTube videos as a kid. I had a channel when I was in like middle school that had hundreds of videos on it.
Oh really?
I posted a lot of videos that were like short films, gaming videos.
I didn't know that.
I only had like 100 subscribers, but I was just pumping out content all the time. I don't know if you would ever classify that as a business. I don't think I ever made more than like the $20 minimum of AdSense money that required us to take it out of the account. But like I said, I started a clothing brand in high school. Not even sure I would consider that a business. I feel like that was honestly more of a hobby. And I think the first time that I launched a business was Popcycle, which was my sophomore year in college, which was like my first business that I was handling money, I was making money, and had partners and kind of learned the whole process around it all.
Okay. And so let's call like these businesses / projects, because that's more accurate. Your first project then was a YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. Why initially did you start that as a kid?
I think that I had a lot of YouTubers that I watched.
Yeah.
If you guys know the YouTube accounts like Corridor Digital, Freddie W, all those kind of like VFX channels.
Freddie W.
For some reason, I loved those channels, and I, in middle school, cracked Adobe After Effects on my MacBook, my family Mac computer, and taught myself how to do those like gun muzzle flashes and stuff.
You figured that out?
Yeah, and I made tons of videos.
Is cool. No, Freddie W was kind of like the guy who I feel like he put After Effects on the map because like I didn't hear about it before him, and then like Rocket Jump and stuff. And
He's
he was doing the
incredible.
craziest stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I watched him a lot as a
Wild.
kid, and I just tried to emulate those videos as much as I could. I made a lot of videos, and I had like neighbor friends that were also in like 6th grade that I was making these crazy videos with. I bought airsoft guns just like Freddie W did, and I was making these like live action trailers. And
so funny.
I don't know, I just saw content that I loved, and I wanted to do it myself.
Dude, I have such a weirdly similar story. Like also starting YouTube, business wasn't even on the brain. Like wasn't even like
Never
on my radar. But I wanted to do like content just because of I would watch like I would do like Nerf gun videos with my neighbors, and we would like try to like video shop them, make them look like legit guns and stuff. And it was like, and I actually forgot about that until you just talked about that. But that was like a whole phase. Like that was probably months of us just like making stupid, horrible videos.
It was years for me, man. I bought cameras, I had GoPros.
We never went that hard. But
I made lots and lots and lots of videos, and again, never in my whole time had the impression of like I wanted to do it for money or I tried to get more people to watch it. I was just making content because I loved it.
Why'd you stop making content?
I got bored, probably.
Okay. Has that been a theme for you? Is like boredom
definitely.
is like the biggest thing that stops you from doing things?
Definitely. But again, as I got older, I realized that I was getting bored because I wasn't making money and I wasn't growing. So learning how to grow and the issues that come along with growing are so fun. Like in the beginning, just doing something that makes no money, you can do it for a year. And if it's still not making any money, as one of our mentors say, that's just an expensive hobby. So
yes, that's true.
Got to make money eventually.
Got to make money eventually. Okay, so with that being said, what was your favorite business / project you worked on? Because I know you worked on like I don't know, for like close like 4 or 5, like big ones. So what was your favorite today?
Yeah, throughout college, I worked on 3 or 4 different startups, if you can even call them that. Just a couple kids getting together, wanting to build a business, and worked on some technical products, some in-person event products, and Popcycle, the first business that I started, has definitely been my favorite thing that I've worked on.
Yeah.
Just from how much that I've learned, I feel like it's much more like my own, and I really built that from the ground up and sort of had the whole idea and everything right from the ground up and built it into what it is today. So that was definitely my favorite.
Cool. And now, can you describe what Popcycle is for the people who don't know?
Yeah, so Popcycle was an event management company on college campuses where I would gather together student-owned clothing brands and help them host these huge Agora marketplace style pop-ups on college campuses. And it wasn't just like a street fair where all the vendors were there kind of selling their own products willy-nilly. I built stores on college campuses. I managed POS systems. I tagged and skewed every single product with prices. I managed the store from start to close. We had music, we had showrunners, store designs, we had everything. And we really built it from the ground up with the intention of making them feel like retail stores on college campuses that popped up and sold student-made clothing.
And they were cool. I mean, I went to a couple Popcycle events, and you would like transform a space completely within like you would like set everything up in a day.
Yeah.
And they would just be a complete store like inside like a library or
overnight. That was the point.
Overnight.
That was the point, that we wanted it to be
so cool.
We wanted it to be in a public space where people were. That was a big thing that I learned through Popcycle, is especially when you're doing events, you want to bring the event to the people. You don't want the people to come to the event.
Right.
That's how you get people to come. So we put these pop-ups in like the public library on the Syracuse University campus, and people would be there on Thursday, see no event. They would come in on Friday and see this huge event in there. They had no idea it was happening, and they would just walk in and end up buying stuff. And we were able to move tens of thousands of dollars of merchandise for brands that never sold a penny in things before on their own.
No, I was every time I saw Popsicle, I was like, dude, because I had like a small clothing brand coming into college, and then I, pretty quickly pivoted to like a tech company. But initially, I had a small clothing brand, and I was like, dude, if I came and there was something like Popcycle on campus, and I could like it was the best, like the best, no question, avenue for like student-run clothing brands to actually move product and get their name out there. I was like, dude, who knows if Popcycle existed when I came into school, because I was a grade above Jackson. I wonder how different my literally whole entrepreneurial journey would have been, because maybe Pharaoh Tire was the name of my brand. Maybe Pharaoh Tire would have like picked up more traction, and I would have like got excited about it and like kept on that wave.
Yeah.
Like could have been completely different just based on that opportunity. And so I only imagine now that like the student-owned brands that did have the opportunity to sell through PopCycle, like who knows what those kids would have been without it. So
yeah, we had
cool.
kids that had just started a brand like a couple months ago and were making these products by hand in their dorm rooms. And then they would sell out in the events.
Yeah.
And they would be begging for the next time that we would host one
Yeah.
of these stores. And there were students that would make up clothing for their brand specifically just for the event because they knew that they would sell them.
Yeah.
Which was mind blowing to me because people didn't do this on their own.
Yeah.
I ran kind of in the fashion circles at Syracuse University while I was there, and I became known in those circles as the guy that did the pop-ups. And I would have a lot of friends that would host things like garage sales
Yeah.
or like yard sales in front of their houses, and they would always ask me like, how do we get people here? How do we sell? And it always baffled me because they would do things that would ensure that they were going to make no money. Like they would host the event inside of a house or something, or they would host this event like half a mile off of campus and expect people to go all the way there.
Yeah.
And so many learnings came from that where, you bring the event to the people. So many things like that I realized that make successful events.
And that's the thing too, because like when you're in those shoes, all these things, what you're saying, put it in a high traffic area, don't put it in a house. These things seem obvious, but to like students who are running clothing brands and like they're not thinking about it in like the most business minded way possible. They're thinking about it like they're obsessed with their craft, making like really cool clothes. They're artists,
Yeah,
and they want to sell their stuff, and they have the business sense. And I know some student run clothing brands at Syracuse were much more successful than others. I've one in mind in particular that did very well because they were more business minded. But the avenue that you provided for them was like they could learn just from that, from emulating that. So I did want to ask you this: what was like a transformation story that you can tell from like a clothing brand that was like doing nothing, and then through PopCycle was able to like kind of pop off?
The best example that comes to my mind was just to kind of give some backstory about the Syracuse University campus. The campus is on top of a big hill,
Yeah.
and then there's a downtown area that's a little bit difficult to get to. You either take a bus or an Uber down there, and really, unless you're going out to like bars or something, nobody goes down there.
Yeah.
And there were some retail stores, specifically this one retail store that sold vintage Syracuse clothing. And he owned the lot, I'm pretty sure. We became pretty good friends. And he was just down there and he had a store full of the coolest Syracuse merch there was. And no students would ever come in and buy anything.
Yeah.
And he was having a really, really, really hard time moving product. And I just went to him and said, look, I'll put your products in my store.
Yeah.
I'll take a 15% commission on everything you sell, but I will move you. Like you will sell product when you come here. And I'm pretty sure that he moved in the 3 events that he did with me more than like the last 2 years of business outside of doing business with me, just through those 3 days of selling at PopCycle.
No, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and that store has the coolest stuff.
That nobody knew about.
Is there any reason not to say the name of the store?
No, Scholars and Champs.
Yep, and the boy Bert, sick store, right next to Original Grain on Salina Street in Syracuse.
Yeah,
coolest stuff, vintage stuff from Syracuse from like the 90s and like the 80s, like such cool stuff.
And the only reason why he wasn't selling everything in that store is because nobody wanted to go downtown and buy it.
Yeah.
So we brought the store to them.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just a matter of location that can just make the biggest difference, especially when your product is as good as his.
Yeah.
Everybody wants vintage college stuff. It's like, yeah. Okay, so I'm sure at least one person will be listening to this at some point with a clothing brand in college, because I feel like it's like a really common thing to have a clothing brand in college. So what's a piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice that you can give to somebody in that situation? Because you're probably the person to ask in terms of like moving clothing in school. What is like the thing they should focus on if when it comes to sales versus not focus on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually wrote a blog post on this, and we'll maybe put it on the screen. I honestly don't remember the URL of my blog on Substack.
We'll put it in the description.
I think it's ensley.substack.com, but I wrote an article, a very lengthy article called "The Student's Guide to Starting a Clothing Brand."
Perfect.
Gained of all the kind of learnings that I saw from like mentoring these brands and running events to sell. So I can kind of take a couple tidbits from there, but the number one thing is creating a quality product. I mean, you can have really bad marketing, you can have nobody to sell it to, but if you have a very quality product and people see it on the side of the street, or they somehow see somebody in their dorm room wearing it or something and they feel it and say, what is this? Yeah. They'll want to buy it. So building a quality product that's not just like a Gildan t-shirt or something, but sourcing really high quality blanks. If you're making jewelry, make sure it's made from high quality materials and just make it something that people will actually want and feel that they didn't waste their money on. Because if they buy something from you that they love, they will spread the word. Yeah. There was a brand that I worked with called Greater Things. I'm still pretty good friends with the kid who started it, and he made hoodies that were very comfortable, really good quality. And several people bought his hoodies from my pop cycle events, and they would come back to me and say, like, this is the most comfortable hoodie that I've ever bought. Like, I get compliments. I get compliments on this all the time. And I know if they're telling me that, they're telling all their friends that. And that's just a great word of mouth way to generate leads.
Yeah. And we're talking about that right now.
Yeah. Is to have
versus
good quality
all the
content.
other clothing brands that didn't have maybe the best, that we are not mentioning, because this kid just like sourced the good stuff. So now not only is his, his business, that was the one I was talking about in terms of like a clothing brand student known that was doing very well in terms of like, in terms of all the others. Like he was selling the most stuff. He had his own section of like the pop cycle event stores.
Yeah. And then the second part that I think is most important is obviously marketing. You're not going to get anywhere that if you don't market, but especially as a student on a college campus, one of the biggest learnings that I saw from doing pop cycle is that students love supporting other students. Yeah. They absolutely eat it up. When we told people that when they walked into the store, everything in here was either made or sourced by students, they would almost always buy something. Yep. So what I would suggest is if you're trying to build a social media following, which is obviously crucial for your brand, make it personal. Like show the process behind you building these products. Talk in the present tense. Yeah. Don't try to be a business and say like our products. Say my products. Like this is my name. I'm making these products in my dorm room by hand. Let people know that, because people will respect that and follow the vision. And if you can get them to understand what you're trying to do and how you're different, people will respond to it. They'll want to follow along and they'll cheer you on when you drop something good.
Yeah. And that applies to all small businesses. Like people like supporting small businesses, especially when they know it's like a guy running it. Mm-hmm. Like so many people, myself included, done it a million times, try to inflate their brand and make it look way bigger than it is, and make it look like a solid company that's trustworthy, because that's what we are inclined to do, because we know the Amazons, the Walmart, we want to be the most trustworthy seller. But when it comes to being a tiny business, when you don't have millions of sales and you don't have giant e-commerce platforms, like just tell them, hey, I'm just one guy or one girl trying to sell my stuff, and like supporting me helps me, do this and follow my dreams. Like I'd be way more inclined to help that person than like a brand I've never heard of that looks more polished. And I think this has become a lot more obvious with TikTok and like TikTok Shop and stuff. I see so many people like, oh, I'm just trying to, do this. It's just me. I'm in my, and it's just super raw content.
And people respond to that.
People love it. Like these people are selling out. Like if I right now started like a small jewelry brand, and I went on TikTok and I was like, showed people me making it and me like, slaving over these little pieces of jewelry and like how much love and effort goes into it, and said, I'm the only person running this. Like if by you buying this, it allows me to like make 2 more of these, and so other people can buy them. Versus if I did the same actions but didn't show the process and just posted a polished brand online, like guarantee you, like
people respond.
People respond. People want to support people.
People respond so well to that. Yeah,
people and stories. People want to support, not polished looking brands that they never heard of. So that's a great lesson, I think, for anyone starting a clothing brand or any brand. So any brand in the early stages. Okay. Something now, about doing a startup that you didn't 3 years ago, specifically 3 years ago, before you did any of your like higher growth startup stuff. Like what's something now that you could tell yourself 3 years ago and they would be like, oh, that's valuable?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would honestly teach myself about advertising a lot more.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of just putting things out there and expecting that people were going to find it
Yep.
without doing any sort of advertising or marketing for myself and telling people where to find it, what it was, and why they should care about it.
Yeah.
So, through my experience of the current career that I have in advertising technology, after doing Pop Cycle and seeing how, advertising posts and doing and like running ad campaigns can actually make an effect on the turnout of an event or sell more products or something like that. Definitely advertising is something that I've learned a lot about.
Yeah, that's great. And um, I think the phrase "build it and they will come" is like completely false now, right? I think that's like a completely false phrase. Like people, I still hear some people say that, like, and it's true if you build like the most incredible thing possible. Like, I don't know, if you build like the Tesla Roadster or something,
Yeah.
like people did come and Tesla's whole thing is building the best possible product and doing no advertising because in the end, product does win. You said it earlier, build the best, make the best clothing possible, and just the referrals do the work for you. And that's a great lesson to take. But if you're not making the best possible thing, which a lot of people can off the bat, especially for like service-based businesses or people are trying to build a piece of technology, you don't know all the problems. You can't make the polished best thing off the bat. You're not even close. So
you have to be vocal about it and you have to really try. But
Yeah.
I do think that the build it and they will come mentality isn't exactly wrong in software sense. Obviously, when you're in the very early stages, you have to tell people what it is. Like you have to get the word out there.
Yeah.
You have to get leads and you have to get people interested in what you're doing. But if you're building a software and your whole like engineering philosophy is product-led growth and your whole idea behind growth is that you want to build the best possible product because that will make people share it and then kind of vice versa, build it good and people will come.
Yeah.
I can understand that with the whole like kind of software flywheels aspect of it.
Yeah.
But when building physical products and really any business in general, when you're first starting, what we've all learned is that you have to tell people about it.
Yes. Yeah. You have to tell people. And even if you are doing product led growth, you still have to tell people in the beginning. Like, you still have to go hard and like get your first people on because if nobody's on,
you could build the greatest product ever, but if you don't tell anybody what it is, no one's going to care.
Exactly. And that's where the falsified building will come.
Yeah.
You got to tell some people. And that's a big piece of advice. I'm not going to get too far into it because we'll probably switch places at some point. I'll do mine. But tell people about your ideas like a lot in the beginning. Like get feedback. Some people are so scared of talking about their ideas because someone's going to steal it. Nobody's going to steal it. You're probably not even going to follow through on it.
Yeah.
So, like,
nobody's going to steal your idea.
Nobody's going to steal your idea. That's like, I mean, my experience at Syracuse talking to all these young entrepreneurs and like entrepreneurship club and stuff, everybody was terrified of sharing about their idea or talking too much about it, and they would vocalize that. And I mean, even me at first, like same experience. But about a year in, I was like, the more people I talked to, the more I understood my own product, the more I understood what people wanted, the more value I could create for people. And I was like, dude, talk to people a lot in the beginning. Nobody's going to take anything. They're going to want to support you even more. They're probably going to talk about it. It's going to do nothing but good for you unless you, yeah. I mean, there's almost no scenario where telling people will be bad for you.
Yeah.
Literally almost none. So tell people about your stuff. Okay. So I asked about something you know about business that you wouldn't, which is advertising, you said. Now, something you know about yourself that you didn't 3 years ago or pre-entrepreneurship.
I guess I would just tell myself not to be afraid to fail. I think that I had put a lot of expectations on myself, and this is a very typical trap that entrepreneurs will catch themselves in, where they're afraid to test something out or they're afraid to run an experiment because they're just afraid to fail. And I mean, I still kind of suffer from that to this day of like being a little bit afraid to jump into something because I just don't want to come across as a failure or something. But really, at the end of the day, you're never going to get anywhere if you don't start and you don't try. Hence why we're making this podcast right now, because we see in 10 years where this concept could be. And we told ourselves we just need to start. And like, you need to make 100 podcasts and 100 pieces of content, and you need to put 100 hours into a business before you're ever going to be able to know the next steps, what's working and how to improve on it. So just start and don't be afraid to fail. And if you have a good idea, pour yourself into it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, it's not quality over quantity. It's quantity leads to quality.
Yeah.
Do as much as possible. And there's like that experiment. I forget the time periods, but it was like one group of people had to make a one ceramic pot within 6 hours or something, or maybe yeah, it was something like that. And then the other group had to make as many ceramic pots as they could in 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
The one group tried to make the most perfect ceramic pot, and they decent. But the group that made the most ceramic pots that they could in 6 hours not only obviously made a lot more, but the ones they made at the end were so much better than the ones who slaved.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
so
cool.
much better because they just the reps. You just you learn about the little things, and it gets better and better. And you get quicker and quicker, and in a lot of ways, like your progress is exponential in that short time span. So the same thing applies to business, to content. It's like make the most of possible. Eventually, it'll get good. That's why this thing's gonna suck right now. It's gonna be horrible, probably, but.
And that's something
catch us in 100 podcasts. It's gonna be sick.
That's something that's so hard for non-entrepreneurs or just people that have never kind of researched the space to grasp. Is like, you see somebody working on this business, and then you'll talk to them two weeks later even, and they're working on something entirely different. It might be around the same mission, but their product, the way that they sell it, the way they position it,
totally
everything
different.
is entirely different. And a non-entrepreneur would be like, you're starting from zero. Like, why are you restarting all the time? You're never locking anything down. You're never growing. But to an entrepreneur, they see that and they're like, we're improving. Like, we know what's working. We know that what we were doing isn't getting where we want to go, and we're getting better every time.
Yep. And the same, even entrepreneurial people can fall into the trap too, where they're iterating almost too much because they're overcorrecting. But that's a whole other conversation. But it's definitely better to correct than not to correct at all.
Yeah.
If you're doing something wrong, I've fallen in all three traps. I've overcorrected, I've undercorrected, and I've also just stuck to the same thing, which I should have corrected. Period. For way too long of periods. So those are traps to avoid, but they're also traps that you cannot avoid unless you learn how they feel in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to do it. So just do stuff. Okay. Last legit question I have for you. What's one piece of value for someone who hasn't started yet, but has an idea or wants to start something, and make it as specific as possible? Like someone with a blank slate or someone who just has an idea. Like, what is something very specific you can tell them that you think could lead to the greatest benefit?
That is a great question. I'm going to put it in the realm of what I understand, which is clothing brands, because that's kind of what I know the best.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've seen from clothing brands that have done very, very well, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, but if you have a blank slate and you're just like, I know that I want to start a clothing brand, but I don't know what direction to take it, be inspired with yourself first. Obviously, clothing brands and business in general, you're going to look for others for inspiration, and you're going to look at other places to be inspired, kind of help you to come up with designs or ideas. But look inward first and really decide, one, like why you want to even start this business in the first place, and then really understand like what you value as a person. The most successful brands that I've seen were centered around the philosophies that the founders practiced themselves. They wanted to appreciate the greater moments in life and not get caught up in the little things. So they started a brand called Greater Things. And that, when they tell that to people, that resonates. And it's not just like, oh, I wanted to start a clothing brand and I like this design. It's like, no.
People buy stories.
People buy stories, and the best stories are real and raw. So like look in and make it yours. And that's with really anything. Like with business, people will respond to it if you can actually come across like you care and you're enthusiastic. The best sellers believe in the products that they're selling.
Oh yeah, that's all you have to do.
So
just like literally believe that it's the solution.
Legitimately believe in what you're building. Look inward for your inspiration, and you'll create something fantastic.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, Jackson. That's all we got for you. That was Jackson Ensley, one of the founding members of Sales by Friday. That was a short summary of the Sales by Friday event, what Sales by Friday as a brand is about, and now an intro to one of the founders. We're gonna interview each and every founder of Sales by Friday so you get to know the team. Then we're gonna start bringing on some really exciting guests and doing other events and talking about really exciting stuff. So stay tuned. Hundreds of more of these to come.
Millions more.
Yeah, that's it. All right, that's a wrap. First episode done. The
That's a
worst
wrap.
one done.
Cut.
See ya. Sick. Oh, good.
Yeah, that was good.